They say the wolves only show their sharp teeth when the protective shepherd is gone, and that is exactly how my world completely shattered. My billionaire husband Lawrence passed away from a sudden silent heart attack, leaving me entirely devastated inside our massive empty estate. But before his body was even buried in the cold ground, his 2 grown children from his first marriage swarmed the house like vicious vultures waiting for a feast. Bradley and Clara had never viewed me as anything more than a calculating outsider who stole their father affection, despite my 20 years of absolute loyalty to Lawrence. They always whispered cruel lies behind my back, claiming I was just waiting for his fortune. Less than 2 days after we laid him to rest, they marched into my living room with an aggressive, high-priced legal team to strip me of my dignity. They served me with a brutal lawsuit demanding I immediately surrender the entire shipping empire, the family mansion, and every single cent of the fortune. They stood there with smug looks, openly celebrating my sudden grief and expecting me to break down in tears before them. They threatened to drag my name through the mud if I did not sign over everything by the end of the week. My longtime family attorney Vance practically fell to his knees in my office, begging me to let him fight this unfair lawsuit in court. He kept shouting that we had mountains of undeniable evidence to protect my rightful inheritance and completely crush their case. I just looked into his panicked eyes, smiled a gentle knowing smile, and told him to draft an agreement giving them every single thing they wanted. Vance looked at me as if I had completely lost my mind under the heavy weight of my intense, crushing grief. He warned me that signing these specific legal papers would strip me of everything and leave me completely broke on the cold streets. I softly told him that sometimes you have to lose a small battle in order to completely destroy your enemy when the real war begins. It did not take long for the scandalous rumors to spread like wildfire through the elite high society circles of Boston. Everyone was whispering about how Lawrence's fragile widow had surrendered his massive shipping empire without uttering a single word of protest. Bradley and Clara spent the entire weekend celebrating their effortless victory in a luxury penthouse suite, popping expensive champagne bottles and mocking my apparent cowardice. The formal court hearing arrived on a gloomy rainy Tuesday morning, and the prestigious courtroom was absolutely packed to the brim with journalists and greedy relatives. I arrived wearing a striking crimson blouse that perfectly matched my absolute composure, radiating a calm energy that clearly unnerved the opposing legal team. My stepchildren sat across the aisle with arrogant smirks, eagerly nudging each other as the judge took the bench. Their corporate lawyer stood up proudly and announced to the crowded room that an amicable settlement had been reached, granting his clients total control. When the judge directly asked me if I understood that I was signing away billions of dollars, I stood up gracefully and walked to the podium. With a completely steady hand, I signed the documents, while Bradley and Clara flashed triumphant smiles at the flashing cameras. The celebratory atmosphere in the room instantly shifted to absolute terror the moment their attorney stepped forward to review the executed paperwork. As the high-powered lawyer scanned the detailed financial clauses hidden deep within the final addendum, the smug grin completely vanished from his face. His hands began to tremble violently as his skin turned a ghostly shade of pale, his eyes widening in sheer horror. Seeing their expensive representative completely lose his professional composure, Bradley aggressively snatched the documents out of his hands to see what was wrong. What the greedy siblings did not realize was that Lawrence Shipping Corporation was secretly on the verge of total collapse due to a massive fraud scheme. Bradley had been secretly embezzling millions behind his father's back, thinking no one would ever notice his crimes. I had actually discovered the undeniable proof of Bradley corporate crimes weeks before Lawrence passed away, but I chose to wait for the perfect moment. By aggressively demanding absolute ownership of the entire business and every associated asset, the siblings had legally assumed 100% of the corporate liability. They were now personally responsible for the massive, unpayable debts threatening to crush the company. The clever clause I had Vance quietly insert into the contract stated that the new owners assumed all past and present financial liabilities. Furthermore, the document included an irreversible trigger that automatically launched a full independent federal audit the exact moment the ownership transferred. Bradley stared at the paperwork in absolute horror as he realized he had just handed the government the evidence of his own crimes. Clara shrieked in absolute panic as their lawyer whispered that the crushing corporate debt alone would completely bankrupt them both within 30 days. The entire courtroom erupted into total chaos as reporters realized the shocking twist, desperately shouting questions while Bradley collapsed backward into his chair. I stood at the front of the room, maintaining my peaceful smile as I looked down at them with calm pity. I never cared about Lawrence's billions or the material wealth, but I cared deeply about delivering justice for the man who loved me. Bradley had broken his father's heart with his constant betrayal, and this was the only way to make him pay. Watching their arrogant empire crumble in a matter of seconds was worth more than any amount of money they tried to steal from me. 2 days after that explosive hearing, federal agents officially raided the corporate headquarters, seizing every single hard drive and arresting Bradley for grand larceny. Clara was forced to liquidate her personal savings and sell her luxury properties just to handle the endless wave of furious creditors. They were left with absolutely nothing but the heavy burden of their own destructive choices and public humiliation. Meanwhile, I quietly packed my personal belongings from the main estate, feeling a profound sense of closure and deep relief. Before the siblings ever filed their greedy lawsuit, I had already moved Lawrence's genuine personal treasures, sentimental heirlooms, and a private account he secured for me. Vance caught up with me as I walked out of the empty mansion, shaking his head in absolute awe of my strategy. I smiled warmly at my loyal friend, telling him that sometimes you must let greedy people take exactly what they want so their own greed destroys them. I moved to a beautiful sun-drenched cottage on the coast of Maine, far away from the toxic whispers of high society. The local community quickly grew to love me, and I spent my afternoons volunteering at the library and funding scholarships for children. Bradley was ultimately sentenced to 15 years in a federal prison, while Clara was forced to work a low-paying job to handle her judgments. The family empire completely dissolved into history, serving as a legendary cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked arrogance and insatiable greed. I often look at Lawrence's photograph on my mantle, knowing I honored his legacy by forcing his children to face reality. If this story of brilliant strategy and ultimate poetic justice touched your heart, please take a moment to support our channel. Smash that like button right now, drop a meaningful comment down below sharing your thoughts on this clever trap, and share this video with your friends. Do not forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another thrilling story of family drama.